All right, fire away. Give me time to run back and forth with the mic with your questions, please. There's no dumb questions. There might be dumb answers, but there's no dumb questions.
Okay, my curiosity is, what is your...
When you remind me your names when you guys ask questions.
Elsie Udome.
Elsie.
Yeah. I'm curious about your strategy for growing the church.
That's what we're going to cover next week.
Well, I won't be here next week. Could you do a quick overview?
Well, yeah, real quickly, the strategy is we use the parable of the sower as our strategy. We believe there's two kinds of people in the world. There are saved and there are lost people. And so we have a strategy to share the gospel. So our strategy is that you can't grow a plant till you sow a seed. And so we work tirelessly to plant the gospel, sow that seed everywhere we go, which is why we plant churches in every country, which is why we take advantage of the opportunity to share the gospel at every event and ministry that we have, because wherever the church goes, there's an opportunity to share the gospel, because who knows, somebody might not be saved in that situation.
What specifically? That's like a very general overview, and I don't know. I'd like to know what exactly, how you go about it.
Come back in week 3. That's when we'll break down the very specifics.
I can't. I won't be here. So I'm just curious about how you do it.
I'm not sure what you're looking for.
I'm looking for, how do you do your outreach?
How do we do our outreach?
Yeah.
Well, okay, what do you mean how we do it? We do it well.
How do you reach others?
Well, we go out into the community. We believe in going to schools. We believe in partnering with Women for Resources. We believe in making sure that we're down at Bike Week, presenting the gospel to people. We go where lost people are at. That's how we partner in the community.
And you have like I don't want to use the word marketing, but I will.
Yeah.
Marketing group that goes to events, essentially?
We don't.
Okay.
We do publicize.
I mean, who does it? That's what I'm saying.
You do. That's who does it. You do. You are our greatest marketing tool in the community. If you're not marketing the gospel, then we have no chance of succeeding. It's not the organization's responsibility, it's the individual's responsibility to market Jesus. So here's what we do. We empower you and we equip you to be the best marketing director for Jesus in the world. That's what we do. And then we send you where you go, like on your street and in your community and your things. We do things corporately, absolutely. There are things that we'll collectively be a part of to do. For example, in August, we'll do a back-to-school outreach in 4 different communities. And so we'll go into those communities with backpacks, and we'll talk to the school systems, and we'll go and we'll give free backpacks and school supplies to these kids, but we'll also share the gospel with them. Right? And we'll do that. We'll do that in thousands of different ways.
All right, that's more specific. That's what we've done that before too. Before you bury the organ, could we contact the Jost family?
Yeah.
Who gave the organ?
Good.
Burying the organ, get the contact information.
Burying the organ is a concept.
I understand, right? But I fully
we would never.
I fully believe it'll be gone, and they should have an opportunity.
Sure.
If they would, want to repurpose it or whatever.
Sure.
And I can get that information if it's.
But let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is that organ the property of this church? Or is it the property of the individual that donated it?
Well, that's probably true too. I just thought it would be a kind gesture.
Would your assumption be that we wouldn't be kind?
No, I'm not saying that. No, don't put words in my mouth.
Okay.
I just said it would be a kind gesture because it meant something to the lady.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see. Are we going to be able to continue all of our missions here?
We'll look at all of them.
Okay. Because, we started Grace House. This church started Grace House.
Okay.
I
don't know all your missions. We'll look at all of them, because what we'll have is we'll have one mission department for all of our campuses. It's Tomoka's mission department, and we'll look at all the individual missions that are a part of the existing community here, and evaluate them.
We have 3 in the Ukraine, which is a tough area to be in. 1 in Jamaica, Good Samaritan Clinic down the way there.
We'll take a look at all of them.
Let me just preface a lot of the questions with, we're not shutting down and then keep running away. We collectively are part of it. And it's not Tomoka coming in and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. You guys follow our lead, and they're working with us.
Yeah.
They are concerned about this community. It's not just, we're going to bring Tomoka over here and now this community is all over. Yes, we're going to be a part of their DNA. We're going to have to adapt to their style or their, they refer to it as DNA. But it's still us. We are the church here.
Excuse me, he needs to be on recording. Where did he go? You need to be on this recording. Okay.
You want to say that again?
No, I don't.
Listen, and he's right. Please don't leave. You're the community here. I mean, you're it. We're not bringing 100 people over here to replace you. You're it. We want to partner with you. Yes, we have an organizational structure. We're going to implement that organizational structure here. It'll be called Tomoka Christian Church, not Plymouth Avenue Christian Church. It will be Tomoka Christian Church, DeLand campus. It won't be Plymouth Avenue. We'll use our elders, our leadership team. The employees will be Tomoka employees. But you're the faith community. You just have a different name. You have the same purpose. Right? So all those missions, absolutely we'll evaluate them. You bet. We support 167 missionaries across the world. We've got over 60 some ministries. We'll absolutely evaluate those because that's part of the responsibility of the kingdom. Absolutely. Some of the ones that you support in Ukraine, we support as well. So we believe in that. We believe in going to those places. And so if you've got ministries or missions that are part of that, we're going to evaluate all of those in light of that process. And we're always open to ideas to reach the community. We're always open to ideas. And that's how we get ministry leaders. People will come in and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? And we'll say no. And then we'll talk to that person about being the ministry leader. Because if it's your idea, we want to equip and empower you to lead the ministry, right? And that's how we get it done. Not them, not me, but you. If it's your idea, then how about if we equip you to serve? Because that's the role of the pastor in the church. Equip the saints to do the work of ministry. That's what we're going to do. We're going to try anyway. Hang on, let me get you the microphone because we're recording and videoing it. Tell me your name.
Geraldine Jarvis.
Geraldine?
Jarvis, yes.
Okay.
I'm more concerned about the principles you believe in. I know you have a lot of money and a lot of people, but if we had the same principles, like about abortion and the basics, I'd like to know what you have to say about that.
Give me an example. For example, we believe in the right to life. We 100% believe in life. We do not believe in abortion. What we believe is that God is the creator of life, and we partner with those clinics and those positions absolutely 100%.
And homosexuality?
We believe that it's a sin like any other sin that can be redeemed by the blood of Jesus Christ. We believe that there are people who will sit in this service, that sit in this church, and their attraction will not be to heterosexual. It will be to homosexual. And they'll deal with that sexual temptation their entire adult life. And there will be days that they'll fail like there are heterosexuals that fail, but we believe the blood of Jesus is able to cleanse them of that unrighteousness. Absolutely. Do we believe it's a sin? 100%. The Bible is not even debatable about that. And it's no longer debatable, and it's not debatable about who can be saved. You can be saved as a homosexual as much as you can a heterosexual. But we do not believe that it's, we don't believe that if you love somebody, it's makes it morally right. It's morally wrong. The Bible's very clear on that, right? And I'm assuming that was your question, whether we...
Yeah, generally, we're in the same boat.
We are. And I would have a hard time believing that we probably wouldn't be. Yeah.
My name is Penny Sheffield.
Hi, Betty.
And I've listened to a lot of things and talked to a lot of people, but I think the church needs to know the bottom line. I know that there was a paper out there that explained the situation of Plymouth Avenue Christian Church. The bottom line is, do we want to close our doors because we cannot financially fix the church, which needs fixing? We're not up to code on a lot of things. The bathrooms, for one, aren't even equipped for handicapped people. I mean, you all need to know the roof needs to be done, all these things. And we eventually can keep on struggling down the road, and eventually the doors are going to be closed? Or do we want to keep it open and do what needs to be done? And I think that the people really need to look at the bottom line, and that is open the doors, keep them open, or close them. That's all I have to say. No questions.
Thanks, Betty. Wow. Betty, what do you do for a living? What? Penny? Penny, what do you do for a living? What did you do? Or what do you do? Okay. I like that. She gets to the bottom line.
All right, real quick, on a note on that. Look at the card you had, your bulletin that you got today when you came in. And look at the bottom corner. Look at what our offering was last week. That's half of what we need to sustain this church. And that's our average now. We're looking at 2 years at the most of keeping the status quo before we close our doors, regardless of what our heart is. That's the reality.
And please, we don't want you to. We don't want the doors at Plymouth Avenue to close. There's way too big of an opportunity here to make it hard for people to go to hell. And we would never want that to happen. And whether you merge with Tomoka and this becomes a campus of Tomoka, or whether you decide a different path, we're going to partner with the leaders to make sure that there's a way to make this work. And Tomoka doesn't have a ton of money. I wish we did. Joe spends it all, so we don't get to have it. You know, if there's $1 in the bank, he wants to give it to a widow or an orphan. I mean, that's just the way he is. I wish we had lots of money. We give away lots of money because we have very generous people, but we don't have lots of money. And so we don't have, $1 million sitting in a bank account that we can just write a check and build a handicap bathroom, but we have to have them. Right? There are things that we'll have to find a way to do that, and there are great ministry partners that'll make that possible. But please, don't ever let the light of the gospel leave this piece of land. There's a great opportunity. There are several thousand. There are more people in the school across the street than in the town that I was raised in. Okay? And nobody would ever tell me that my hometown wasn't important. So don't close these doors. If we exist for no other reason than to try to reach the high school community, it's worth being open. And we'll do anything we can to help you make that work.
Hi, my name's Chris, and this question is more for the church leadership. How did we get here? And what I mean is not how did we get here financially. I mean, that's a long story that nobody really has time for. How did we get to the point where we thought that the best option for the short-term and the long-term future of the church was going to another church and asking them to take us over, as opposed to trying to work through other options and possibilities, and when those didn't work, then going to another church and asking them to take us over?
You want to address it? We went through a process. I'll go back. Probably about 5 years ago, the church started declining. We went through a process of finding out, and we looked at ourselves. The leadership looked at ourselves. Are we leading the way we are supposed to? Do we have the staff we're supposed to? There was a lot of self-analysis over the last 5 years. And more recently, we brought in a coaching group, E2 elders. And they went through and met with many people here. I think y'all might have been involved in that. And they went through those processes. With their recommendation and their teaching and training for our leadership, we came up with a strategy to go it on our own. Well, in the middle of that strategy, we lost Adam. And that was a big part of...
I thought E2 was called in after Adam left.
No. We were working with E2 back in November or October, I believe. I can't recall the exact actual date, but it was before Adam left. So that put a big damper in the process. You can't, what we wanted to do was go through that process anyway, figure out what we needed to do as a church body and what our direction was, and then hire the individual that would fit that purpose. Well, in this process, we found out that we weren't going to be able to do that without giving up staff we had, or cutting the staff to part-time, getting rid of some of the ministries we had. There were checks and balances in all of this, because we could not sustain what we had and bring in somebody that could bring that vision forward. And we presented that to the whole leadership, and the leadership, as elders, we met on that, and then we brought it to the leadership, and the leadership, we didn't get a whole lot of buy-in. And quite honestly, we weren't comfortable, or I wasn't, I won't speak for these guys, but I wasn't comfortable with the vision and the strategy moving forward with, I'm going to come right out and say it, with the apathy in the church. Because for us to move that strategy forward had to be the entire church buying into it. If we couldn't get buy-in from the leadership, how are we going to get buy-in from the church congregation? That's when we went to, and this was always an option on the table. That's when we decided, okay, let's investigate, and that's what we're doing, is we're investigating this as an option. This is not a done deal. I think I've stated several times that this is up to the congregation. It's highly recommended by the leadership. The leadership unanimously chose this path after looking at all of our options as the best option to reach the community and do what God's called us to do. Not for what we want. You know, I've been in, there's people that have been here longer, but I've been in this church for 25 years. I don't want to see change, but I know it's got to happen. I know to get kids in this door, to see high school kids like when my kids were here just thriving. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart more than seeing the organ go. And I've got to, as a leader, I'm called to lead this congregation to the right path. And that's what we have decided. You know, we sat down and we said, we have got to do this. This has got to be our calling is to shepherd the flock. And the shepherd doesn't ask the sheep where they need to go. A shepherd says, this is the best path. But the shepherd also doesn't do it arbitrarily. He does it by looking at the best option for caring and furthering the lives. So that's how we got here. I hope that.
Well, the second part of that is, I don't want to be dramatic. To me, this is the nuclear option. To me, there should have been, in an ideal situation, there's a series of options you go through. You get to the one at the end where that's the final option. This doesn't pass. It doesn't fly. What's plan C?
Adam was the middle point. Chuck left. Adam was that middle point. We had a search committee at Plymouth Avenue Christian Church that spent months evaluating everyone across this nation through resumes, talking, Skype calls. Whether we wanted to think about it as Adam was that middle point or not, he was that. We've gone through this process again. To go through that direction again, we lose an entire generation over there. We lose students who are 12th graders who are now going to college, and we haven't reached them. You may think of it as a nuclear option, But Adam was here for 3 years. We have a property here. We have completely turned around our finances, but we haven't done a single thing to do outreach here. We cannot be thinking about this church, these people, because I'm not worried about you. You're going to be saved. That community, 30,000 people in the land, is who I'm worried about. So by taking the safe route and thinking about doing a search committee, finding a person, versus asking Tomoka, who's done it with excellence, whose mission and purpose meets our mission and purpose, to come partner with us, take this community and reach that school across the street, that's why we're doing this.
Also, I lost my train of thought. The possibility, we have been contacted repeatedly over the last 3 years by other entities, not just Tomoka, but Real Life, Journey. We've had them call and say, we are going to start a church in your area. Not, hey, we want to be a part of you. We are the message was, we're going to start a church in DeLand. How will that affect you? It would devastate us, quite honestly. We would still be the status quo 2 years and close our doors, not reaching anybody. If we passed up on this opportunity again, which we've declined over the last 3 years several times, but if we passed it up again, we came to the decision that this was probably our last opportunity to take this path. We could hire a minister. We could struggle another 2 years, and if that didn't work, then try to see who wants to merge with us. I don't think we would have had that opportunity in another 2 years. I think that chance would have evaporated because they would already be here. Then we have no safety net at all. Yes, it does seem like a nuclear option, but we evaluated and evaluated and evaluated every other option we had, not just for what happens now, but what is the future of that. So it's a drastic move, yes, but it's one I think God has placed. You've heard the story about the guy who's drowning, and they keep sending boats or rafts or whatever the story is, and he just, and he gets to heaven and says, God, why didn't you save me? He's like, well, I sent you. I think this is that kind of story. That God has given us this opportunity many times, and now we're investing. We're being a part of the legacy that will continue here on this corner.
Tell me your name again, did you say, Chris? I think the question that you brought up at the end there about the nuclear option, I think that at the end of the day, that's probably the biggest area and the biggest gap that people will have to deal with, right? I don't think there's a disagreement that this is the nuclear option. I think they would agree this is the nuclear option. I think the only disagreement is going to be, did we do everything that needed to be done to ever consider the nuclear option? And I think what you're going to find, and what everybody else is going to find, is that you're going to have to determine that if you disagree with whether we did everything or not with these leaders, are you still going to be willing, if you disagree with whether they did everything in your opinion, are you still going to be willing to stand behind the leadership and follow in that way? That I think at the end of the day, that question is what ultimately every congregation has to come to conclusion with, right, in that possibility. Because I don't think anybody up here is going to go, no, you're probably wrong, it's not the nuclear option. Yep, I'd say you're probably right, nuclear option. Question is, did these 4 men and the leadership team do everything that everybody in here thinks they should have done to get to this point? I think there's always going to be disagreement about that. The question is going to be, where are you going to land in that process, right? Because I think the time for going back and saying, hey, can we do this, I think that's over. So the question is, are we going to accept the nuclear option? Yes or no? If not, then you're going to have to go back, and then you're going to get to refigure some of that stuff out, right? Because what's on the table now isn't going back and figure out whether you did or didn't. The question's going to be, are you going to accept the nuclear option, or by saying no, then are you willing to jump in and go back and go, okay, let's try this, this, and this? That's probably what you're going to end up with.
The term nuclear option, or are we passing up on a blessing from God?
Sure.
When you all, our names came up, Roger Davis came up as a deacon and voted him in, and Eric as a deacon, then an elder, and as a congregation you voted in. We're at a point right now where as a congregation, you have to decide the people that you put up here, do you trust us? Do you trust our judgment? Or have we failed you? And it could be one or the other way. Some of you are going to think that we have failed you. Others are going to trust our judgment that we've relived these things. What I see is what Eric was talking about a little bit about the people across the street. That we're not appealing enough that my own daughters can't invite their friends across the street because they don't want to come to this church for whatever reason. You know, might be curb appeal or whatever. But we do have kids that will come across here every day and smoke dope in our pavilion, and do drugs in our pavilion, and do donuts in our parking lot, where we've had to, you know, put up some barricades just to try to keep our property a little bit nicer. So what you need to do is individually pray about it, go home and pray about it, and decide where you can make a difference. Because we can't do it alone, the 4 of us, or the 6 of us, or 8 deacons or elders. But it's, like Cord was saying, it's individually. We each need to look in the mirror, and who do you see in return? Are you serving Christ? Where are you serving in the community? You might not serve Plymouth Avenue Christian Church or Tomoka Christian Church. Are you serving at Grace House? Are you serving at the soup kitchen? Because when you decided to follow Christ, you said, it is time for me to serve. Or are you coming here to be served? I just don't want us to pass up on a blessing. It might seem like a nuclear option to others, but Palm Bay baptized 31 people last year, and that church almost closed its door. I don't know if we baptized 3.
They were in worse shape than you guys were in some ways, but I'll just tell you what Tomoka will do. If high school kids from DeLand High School come across the parking lot to smoke pot in our pavilion, we'll have a team out there feeding them lunch. Because pot smokers get the munchies, we'll feed them. Okay, and you know what we'll do? We'll love them and we'll share the gospel with them. We won't run them off the property, because what they need more than anything is to know Jesus. And I guarantee you that if they come on our property, we'll feed them and we'll love on them, you know, and we'll make that possible. And there will be churches that go, that is the worst thing in the world to do. We'll simply respectfully disagree, and we'll do that. We're not condoning it. We're not the police officers. We're Christians who love Jesus and know they need Jesus. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to show the light of love to them. That's what we'll do. We'll take the barricade down, and if they come, we'll make sure that that grill's running and that there are people out there that take care of them. That's what we'll do. And we'll know that every time we're doing that, we're planting a gospel seed, right? And that's all. And here's the thing. If it produces one person who accepts Christ, it was worth every penny we ever spent on any burger. And that's kind of stuff we'll do. That's how we'll reach the community in these weird ways, because somebody will walk in and go, here's what somebody said to me last time I was here 2 weeks ago. Why don't we open a daycare? And all he did was point to the school. And I thought, what an ingenious idea to reach the community at DeLand High School. How many single mothers are over at that school? How many people there would drop their kids off at a daycare, a licensed daycare on this property? Probably more than we could ever imagine. Was it you that said that to me? Oh, they do. Oh, well, then we wouldn't want to be in competition. That would be mean.
I'll repeat that. They already have their own daycare center over at the high school.
Well, good for them. That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah. Say your name.
Jennifer. I have a couple questions.
Jennifer.
Since this wouldn't be on the table in 2 years, were you guys already pursuing property in DeLand?
We hadn't began the property pursuit. We had a map that had already listed, and I already had a map that had all the churches designated as to where they were at and where they were located. I'd already began the prospect of meeting. I'd already met a couple executive pastors in the community and began conversations with them. We had began the conversation with Salty Church about the possibility of planning a campus over here. So yeah, we were in talks about it.
What's the chance that Michael and Billy will have their jobs?
What's the chance? I wouldn't begin to tell you a chance, but I will tell you they'll have a 100% chance to be interviewed and be hired on our staff, and they won't have to compete with other people in that process. It'll be them interviewing without having to make it a beauty contest. Like we want a worship guy on our campus. So what we'll do is we'll interview Michael independently before we ever would consider bringing anybody else in. So he'll have a better chance than anybody else in the process, as well as Billy and Ben. Okay?
And I'll add to that by, if we go out and, if the other choice is to go out and find a new pastor and brought him in, he's going to evaluate his staff anyway. Because if you hire a pastor, you're going to let them have their vision or whatever. So Michael and Billy would be in the same position where they would be talking to a new pastor. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Because Roger has a question.
If it even got that far, if we were to evaluate what we could financially handle, their jobs are at risk in that process also. Even though we know there's connection here, that they have invested their time in families, and families have invested their time in our staff, it may not be feasible to financially have. Right now, for the last 5 years, we've been operating overstaffed according to our finances. But we have, through the love of those individuals, kept them on. You know, quite honestly, the elders have not had the strength to do what needed to be done here to make this church thrive. And we failed you in that aspect.
And here's the thing, Billy and Michael and Ben might get through this process and go, we don't want to work for them. I mean, just in fairness to them, I mean, they may not want to work here. So you got to give them an opportunity to evaluate it as well. I mean, I know they want to be employed, but they also want to evaluate Tomoka as a potential employer in that process as well. Yes.
This is just going back to Chris's thing.
Remind me of your name.
Roger.
Okay.
Coming from a deacon's perspective, Chris, there's been a long process to get to this point, but we had to answer one ultimate question. Is it about Plymouth Avenue Christian, or is it about Tomoka Christian, or is it about the kingdom? We all have one ultimate goal. Whether what church it is, the church is just a physical building that we all fellowship in. But the real work is out there. And that's where we came to that decision. How are we going to do that if we do not have the means or the kingdom workers to work it? And that was one of the driving forces to our decision. So we all have to ask ourselves, is it about Plymouth Avenue? Is it about Tomoka? Or is it about the kingdom? And we can't answer that for you. You have to answer that yourself through prayer and meditation.
And that really is the blessing of being a part of an independent Christian church, is you get to evaluate that independently. And we certainly get that. And listen, we're totally fine with that. Our ownership is in our mission, and that this doesn't work out, listen, it's completely okay. It's totally, because listen, Tomoka has to evaluate it too. I mean, we're in the process of vetting this opportunity as well, because our group back there will still have to accept the process, right? So, we're not looking for a mail order bride. We want to invest in the process too. And so you guys have the same opportunity as we do, and trust that the Lord's outcome is going to be okay. Name?
Mark. It's my understanding that 1 week out of 4 will have a physical pastor. And my question is, will it be someone perhaps like Ben, who is part of our local group, or will it be someone from the parent group on a rotating basis, or how's that going to work?
So this campus will have a full-time campus pastor. So you'll always have a physical pastor. Their title will simply be campus pastor. They'll be the responsible caretaker of the mission and vision of our community here in DeLand. So they'll be here every week. And they'll be on the platform every week at some level, welcoming, communicating with you all, right? Primarily the message will come through video on the campus, and that's part of the process of going, I don't know if I like that or not. So whether it's 1 out of 4, 1 out of 6, whatever, the goal is to get somebody to come over here. 90% of that preaching live will always be your campus pastor. So let's just say Ben. Let's say Ben goes through the process of interview and we hire Ben as the campus pastor. Ben will be here every week. And when there's live teaching on this campus, Ben will do 90% of it. Now, Pastor Joe, the lead pastor, he'll also come over here and preach live several times during the year as well. So, and then there'll also be opportunity for Pastor Michael, Pastor Ben, Pastor Cord to come over here. But most of the teaching will come through our campus pastor or our lead pastor, for sure. I think there's one over there too when you're done.
Good morning, I'm John.
Hey, John.
With what you just spoke about with the I guess the sermons on the screen or however you want to word that. After hearing about that 2 weeks ago, me and my wife actually went over to Palm Bay to actually see what it was like firsthand. Because I'll tell you, I was a little skeptical about it because, gosh, I don't know how long ago, my son did an internship out in Kansas City and then volunteered at the church that the people that housed them, I can't remember the name of the church, but that's how they, Legacy in Kansas City, and that's how they did it. They had off-campus ministries, and it worked. And so that was the first thing I wanted to go see when we went over to Palm Bay after you telling us what their numbers were before this happened and everything. And I brought back one of the pamphlets they had in their little area there for you to get to meet the campus minister. And let me tell you folks, we need this. Seeing where they were before Tomoka came in and where they are now, I wish we had already done this 4 or 5 years ago. Being a part of this leadership, or was part of this leadership years ago, a member of this church since '93, and in the mid-'90s wondering what Tomoka was doing differently than what we were and where they are now, we need to plug into that. It was always a thing of plugging into what's working. They found what was working, and it's working for them, and it's working in satellite areas being able to do that. And I just, the service, they had the music right there live in front of you. When we went to the screen to watch the sermon, it was just like what we had today. It was like the person was in the room speaking to you. You didn't realize 3 minutes into it that you were looking at a big screen watching a sermon. So,
and it is an adjustment. I mean, it's funny because when we decided to do this with Palm Bay, it was practically outside of the question you asked about the live preaching, it was the biggest question, right? So what we did was, several weeks into the process, we had Joe go to Palm Bay live, and we showed the video at Ormond. And one of the things we say at the end of our services or at the beginning is, hey, if you're a visitor, we have a room called The Link, space called The Link. And in the link, we want the visitor to be able to get to the pastor, right? Because if the pastor goes out there, church people swamp him, the visitors never get to speak to him. So we designate an area specifically for visitors to get to meet the pastor, right? So the week that we did the video, the first time we did video in Palm Bay, or in Ormond, while Joe was in Palm Bay Live, we said, hey, if you're a visitor, man, we'd love for you to go to the link, get to meet the pastor. So guess what? 3 families showed up in the link on Saturday night at 6:30 to meet Joe, because they didn't even know he wasn't live, right? They were just used to watching the screen, never even thought to occur to them to see whether he was standing on the stage or not. They just assumed because they saw him on the stage, he was present in the link, and they were blown away to go, he wasn't here? I think our hesitation here is always greater than our actual sensing it while we're there, right? Going to the theater is a multi-billion-dollar business because nobody really cares, because the screen is as powerful as being live is most of the time. And you'll be amazed. And here's the thing, if you don't know if you like it, go try it somewhere. There are lots of churches that use a screen, right? Go see what you think. And you might come away with John's experience and Kim's experience, and maybe you won't. But you should go try it just to see what it feels like. I think I would encourage you to do that in this process.
My name is Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
I have a question about the personality of this church. Are we going to be able to retain any of that when we partner with, or if we partner with Tomoka?
Boy, I hope so. I mean, the personality of your church is driven by the individuals of the church. So I certainly hope that, we certainly hope that ministry is done contextualized in the community by the people who live in the community. Palm Bay still has its personality. They're a redneck community. You go to Palm Bay, they're alligator hunting, carp fishing, redneck, blue-collar folk, and you know what? That's who they are, and they do that well. The only thing we provide is an organizational structure that allows them to go do that. So, man, I sure hope you keep your personality. We don't want you to be like us. I mean, your personalities are unique to who you are, and your giftings are unique to who you are. I sure hope you maintain your own personalities in that process. We're going to change an organization is what we're going to do. We're going to change an organizational structure. But we really hope that the personality of the people in it and the church itself grabs a hold of the mission. That's what we'll do. We have an awesome team of staff people that make the organization run well. Perfectly? Nope, not even close. But we do have an organizational team that makes it run well, that allows campus pastors, student pastors, children's ministry directors, worship people to do their job. We do. We have a really good team that allows them to do that. And we want that to be done by the uniqueness of the individual and God's gifting in that. So yeah, men, please keep your personality. We don't want Westworld, right? We don't want carbon copies of Ormond Beach. We want ministry done in DeLand by people who live in DeLand, who love Jesus.
Let me add to that, Court. Have you ever worked for a company, or some of you might work for a company now, where your job description changed and your responsibilities changed? Okay, some of that might take place. But it's not like a monopoly or whatever. It's come in, evaluate every area, and see where we can do it better. I mean, there's a lot of areas where we can do it better. And I was asked, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago when Cord was here, what about the elders? And my response was, I don't need to have a title to serve. Jennifer works in the RV department. She doesn't have a title. That's part of her ministry of serving. Roger's a deacon. Brooks Rodefer works the sound system. So, I mean, people take responsibilities, but ultimately, it's us, like Cord was saying, that need to be the outreach into the community. And that's where my concern is. I am so far unconcerned about watching a video if the message is going to save lives. I don't care if it's a video or if Joe Pudding's standing here on the stage. What's the difference? In Sunday school, we watch Lou Giglio, and Lou Giglio will do a 6-week series. We're watching a TV screen, but we're getting fed. Okay, so it's a personal thing, like I said before, that you just have to be able to bury the organ and move on.
When I first started working in the restaurant business, I worked for an individual owner that owned 4 Pizza Huts. It was a family-owned business. I loved it. I get to run the Pizza Hut in my own community, and it was personal. 1 guy, 4 managers, 4 Pizza Hut. It was wonderful. He got up there in years and he sold it to a corporation that owned 786 Pizza Huts. Man, I was mad because I didn't want to go to work for a corporation. I wanted to work for a private owner. It was much easier. Plus he knew Wilt Chamberlain. That was pretty cool. So I remember our first meeting. So when the corporation took over, they took us 4 Pizza Huts and they put us in a region with 20 Pizza Huts. And we had to go to our first meeting, and I just was against it from the get-go. And the guy who was my new boss, my regional manager, he got up on a chalkboard and he drew 2 circles. A big one and then a smaller one inside it. And he said this, and when he said it, I wanted to hit him and leave because I was so mad. So he drew the big circle, and then he drew the small circle, and he put an X in the small circle, and he said, this is your circle. He says, as restaurant general managers, everything in this circle is your responsibility. And not one thing about that will change, whether Glenn, the owner who sold you, owns you, or whether this corporation does. It's still making pizzas. And then he pointed to the bigger circle, and he said, that's my area of responsibility. As long as you stay out of my area of responsibility, you'll be able to have your job in this corporation. Now, I wanted to hit him because I thought it was obtuse, I thought it was obnoxious and arrogant. But as I got older and I worked for them longer, I realized the only thing his circle did was stabilize my circle. I still had to go to do work exactly as I did when Glenn owned it or whether the Pizza Hut Corporation owned it. And all the big circle did was give my smaller circle a nice place of stability. That's what we hope to do here. What we've done at Palm Bay, here's what we've done. We've hired a great campus pastor. David's phenomenal. And then what we do is we provide a big circle for him and his team to do ministry in. And they're doing it. And they're doing it like Palm Bay would do it, not like Ormond would do it, thank God. They're doing it. Right? David came to me the other day and said, listen, Palm Bay has no cold night homeless shelter here. None. I want Tomoka Christian Church in Palm Bay to start it. I need 10 grand. And I said, okay. Go. Because that's their personality. Right? It's the contextualization of the ministry in that community. And so David is preaching live this weekend down there, and his whole goal is to raise 10 grand from that community because they want to do ministry the way they do ministry down there. All we've done is provide a circle that stabilized their ability to do that. Right? When we took them over, they were meeting about 55% of their budget. So what we did in the first year was we paid the other 45%. Wasn't easy to do. We didn't ask anybody to do it. That's just the way it worked out. We covered and guess what? They got to grow because they didn't have to slow the ministry down because they couldn't pay for it. This year they're paying for 77% of their ministry, their responsibilities. And David knows it, but nobody else does because they're getting to do ministry. That's what we'll provide for you. We'll provide for you a circle so that we don't have to fire Billy and Michael to hire a good pastor. We'll keep staff here to be able to do ministry, and if you pay for 55% of it, we'll pay for 45% of it so you can continue to do ministry. All the while teaching you the expectation that if you serve Jesus, you give. Right? And we'll work through that process because it costs money to run an organization, and whether we like it or not, Plymouth Avenue Christian Church Incorporated and Tomoka Christian Church Incorporated are businesses. And it's not good business sense to spend 40% more than you're making. And we don't sell hamburgers or widgets. The only way this organization grows financially is that people who sit in those chairs give out of the generosity of their heart. That's the only way it works. And we know it takes a while to grow people into that. And so while you're growing and learning, you know what? We're going to be stabilizing that circle so that ministry can continue. And all these guys have said is, we don't have that big circle around us. We're not part of a corporation. We're a small circle, getting smaller, because the resources available to grow that circle has decreased to the point that we have reached a nuclear option. And maybe that nuclear option is a God blessing. But whatever it is, we're just going to provide a circle, folks. And we're not going to be jerks about it, because we all love the same thing. We love the Lord and we love people, and that's what we're going to do. And we'll make it possible for us to do that. Because all we can do is plant and water. That's it. There's no guarantee that 3,000 people are going to come to know Jesus, but we do know this: we're going to plant and water like we expect that to be the case, because we believe God when He says, if you sow generously, you'll reap generously. And that's what we're going to do.
One last thing. Bottom line's the numbers.
Did he bring his own microphone? How did he have that so quickly? Oh, okay.
Bottom line's, everybody likes looking at numbers. Last week when I got this, 2 weeks ago you talked about they had 69 people at Palm Bay average when you guys went in. This, I guess, was printed out at the end of 2017. They had average number of families who received groceries weekly was 60. They had a movie night, had over 600 people show up in the community in an outreach. The average number at that point, January 8, 2017, or at the end of 2017, they went from 69 to 164. When we were there last Sunday, they had 205. And as you know, coming to this church, the numbers always seem to drop this summer because people are on vacation. So I probably think they're probably closer to 225 normally. And then here's a big thing right here. We talk about the high school across the street. Average number of Heritage High students who attend a weekly Fellowship of Christian Athletes meeting led by Tomoka, 100. That's 100 kids going to FCA that are being ministered to and reached.
That's crazy. And David walked into that high school, introduced himself to the principal, found that the principal was going through marital problems, ended up praying for him, ended up counseling him. Through that, got an invitation through the FCA, and now every Thursday through both lunch hours, he has over 100 high school students that he gets to share the gospel with. It's crazy, right? I mean, it's crazy. We had a Palm Bay police officer go through McDonald's and they refused to serve him because of everything that's going on in the world. Said, absolutely not, we won't serve you. You know what Tomoka did? We went and found that police officer. We brought him to the stage at Tomoka Christian Church in Palm Bay. We brought him and his family on stage, and we offered him a $150 gift card, and we prayed for him. And we honored the men and women who serve us in those capacities. Yeah, we didn't give him a gift card to McDonald's, right? But we went and found him. David went and found him. David went and found him. Because the first thing David did when we hired him was he went to the mayor, he went to the school principals, and he went to the police chiefs, introduced himself, and said, there's ever anything we can do for you, you let us know. David has now counseled every one of those couples. He has seen people come to know the Lord through those relationships. The police officers in Palm Bay use our parking lot as a shift change area and a parking area. We've developed a great community outreach in those things through working in those opportunities. And here's what we know. All of those things are planting and watering, planting and watering, and planting and watering, and planting and watering. And we know that God's going to bless that because He promises to. The one thing I don't, people as an executive pastor, I always get these questions. Can we do this? Can we do this? And here's the thing. They always want to know, do you think God will bless this? Listen, read your Bible. You know what God blesses? He blesses sowing. Sow generously, reap generously. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to sow generously. We're going to sow. And we're going to make sure that everything we sow, we water, right? We're going to water the heck out of it because you got to have water to make it grow. And then we're just going to trust that God's going to keep His promise that that's going to happen. And we do it like people. We do it well some days, and some days we do it terrible. But we're going to provide you guys a circle that allows this circle to go from where it's at and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And there's nothing about this model that's non-negotiable for us, right? Listen, if these guys came to us and said, we have one non-negotiable, Michael, Billy, and Ben have to be hired by you, you know what we would say? No, we're out. Because you got to leave it all open in that process. But once we become a multi-site, if that works out, there's nothing we won't look at. If we find out that video teaching doesn't work in the land, we'll figure it out and move on, and we'll bring live teaching in, right? We're not adverse to any of those things. But we've only done it for a year and a half at Palm Bay. And all I know is that all the people that objected to the video screen are coming. And in the summer, when attendance goes down, we've seen 3 weeks of increase. In the summer, when giving goes down, we've seen 3 weeks of increase. I know why that's the case, but it seems like God's blessing that process, right? I mean, somebody came into the back of the room when Joe came down to Palm Bay and said, the music's too loud. Music's too loud. And he points to one of the TV screens in the hallway and says, this is how loud the music should be. This is just perfect. And Joe looked at the guy and said, well, you should worship out here then, and then when the preaching comes in, you should go inside. Right? 4 months later, Joe came down to preach again live, and the same guy found him and said, music's still too loud. Joe looked at him and said, I'll tell you what. He said, we have a wonderful ministry in the parking lot where we meet and greet people who come onto our parking lot to our services. He said, I'll tell you what a lot of people at our campus do that don't like the music and think it's too loud. You go serve in the parking lot ministry, and by the time you get everybody parked and come in, the music will be over, then you can come in and listen to the preaching. Because again, certain people. Do you think anybody's ever going to agree about the volume? No. We got 80-year-olds that are like, crank it up, right? We got 20-year-olds that are like, it's too loud. Everybody's got their, we had a 72-year-old elder that went into an elders meeting and go, why is the music so quiet? We need to turn it up. We're like, what? Found out he played in a rock band his whole life. He thought it was quiet, right? A couple of our others were like, holy cow, it's so loud you can't even hear straight, right? Everybody's got a different opinion about it, right? All we know is that our leadership agrees, then we move forward. And we're never adverse to evaluating it. So screen goes up, we'll try it. Year into it, we go, it ain't working, we'll take it down. We'll try whatever we can to reach the community. Okay? You asked your question, right? Personality, right? You promised me you're going to keep your personality? Okay, well, good. Well, if you see it not, you make sure it does. Okay? Any other questions? Listen, thank you guys. We'll do this again next week. And part of the benefit next week is that first service will be here, right? We're having one service, and that's at 9:30, right? And so afterwards we'll do it. If you have more questions, bring them back. Again, here's the great thing about this. You get to be free in your choice. We're praying that you're praying. No preconceived ideas. Grateful for the process and the journey. It's been wonderful being a part of this. My wife and I are blessed to be here listening to the first service with Michael playing the piano and singing. He keeps me singing as I go. Reminds me of the 10-year ministry we had before we came to Tomoka. I mean, there's something about it that's melodic to our heart. But seeing 246 people baptized in our church last year is more important. Knowing that we planted 27 churches in the world last year, and knowing that one of those churches planted 40 churches on their own, that's more important. And so at the end of the day, there's things that matter a great deal to me. There's things that matter a great deal to me in church. I'll give any of them up. Any of them up. If it reaches one person. And she knows that I have. Because for 4 years, my son was our student pastor. And I was his boss. And we had 200 kids about in our youth group. And he was a pain. He wasn't a great employee. Carbon worked as his assistant for a while. But the kids loved him. Parents loved him. He was hard to deal with as an employee because he was my son. He was just obnoxious. He got sideways with our lead pastor over something I'm sure that was stupid. And this was a couple years ago. And this was 3 months right after his youngest daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. She was 5 at the time. That happened in March. By June, he was completely sideways with our lead pastor. And our lead pastor, one of my dear friends, was telling me he wanted to fire him. And I was adamantly opposed to it because it wasn't about work, it was about something personal. And I'm the boss of the staff, but Joe's my boss. By August 5 months into their journey with their youngest daughter having leukemia. And a month before my mom would die, his grandmother, Joe came to me and said, I'm here. I want him fired. And so Joe eliminated me from the process and went to the elders. And while we conducted our home group on a Monday night, Jeremiah went to the elders and got fired because they got sideways. I got eliminated from doing my job, and he, my son, had gotten fired 5 months after his youngest daughter had been diagnosed with leukemia, a month before his grandmother would die. And everybody on staff watched me because they only wanted to see one thing when I showed up the next day at work, how I'd respond. Because everybody knew I'd been run over in the process. And she will tell you, I never said a word. I never said a word but support and love for our elders and our lead pastor. Because as much as I love my son, and as good a job as I think he did, I think there are things more important. And I know that the year that my son was there, God saw fit to use that church to reach over 300 people. And not just reach them, but see them baptized. And I saw over 30 churches planted. And I saw missionaries sent. Now, as a dad, did I agree with all that? Nope. As a boss, did I agree with it? Nope. But there are things more important? Yep. I had a chance to be certain people. Instead, I believed in all people, which made me work with messy people. Every day, nobody on our staff practices that more than I do. And nobody knows that more than she does. And I never say a word. Because it's not the point. It ain't like I don't have opinions, folks. I got lots of them, just like you do. But I just realize they're not near as important as the most important thing, which is the people that Jesus died for. And shame on me, shame on me, shame on me if those things are more important than the person that Jesus died for. Never ever going to be the case anymore with me. So I hope and pray during this process for all of you. It is, honestly, it's just an honor to be a part of it. And whether this works out or not, I'm okay with that. It's just been really cool getting to be a part of this and spend the next 3 weeks with you. It'll be a lot of fun. And Carmen's going to come every week because I know that by the time this is over, you will like her more than you like me, and so that'll be okay too. So we love you. We love being a part of this, and we're honored to just have the opportunity. Okay?
Court, if I can just say, some of you have reached out the right way to the elders. You've either called or emailed Chet individually or Jamie or, send a text or whatever. I just encourage you to do it the right way. Go to the person. If you've got a problem with this process or whatever, biblically it says go to your brother in love. So if you've got a problem with something, it's okay. It's okay. Just come to us. We're, like Cord said, we're not going to agree with everything. But don't be that certain person that's going out amongst the congregation or the community and saying things that you wish you would say to us. I'm not going to bite your head off. We're not going to agree on everything. Do it biblically. Okay? Come to us in love. We might not agree, but as long as the kingdom prevails, I'm good.
You've been really quiet. You want to say something?
Oh, everything's been great.
How about if you did?
I'll close this out.
How about you pray us out?
All right. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for all your blessings, especially here at Plymouth Avenue, Lord. We thank you for the gift of being able to hear Cord preach today and in the upcoming weeks. And we just ask your blessing over this whole process, that everyone has an open heart and open mind, and that we surrender to your will, Lord, and that we keep our focus on this community and reaching those that don't know you, Lord. And we just ask your blessing and your comfort for those that are suffering here in our church, Lord. And we ask that you bless us in the week ahead. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.